Ever wondered how the trials of Dead by Daylight would go if the survivors remained unchanged by the entity? Yes, that's right, the entity has changed the survivors too. Today we're going to consider how strong the survivors would be if the entity left them unchanged. How strong should they be lore accurately? And could they even take down any of the killers? Here's our tiers, and let's get into it. They would be far weaker. These are the characters that would actually likely be weaker than how they appear in the realm. Most survivors do receive a buff, considering they're able to take 2 whole hits of a weapon without just collapsing to the ground. So realistically, these characters would be a bit weaker. Dwight is the perfect example, I think, of a character who is actually buffed up a lot by the entity. Pre-realm, he's literally just your average guy and incredibly scared. He's not strong, and his greatest strength is noted to be hiding, so I think realistically he would be far weaker. We have to consider, of course, that at base it takes all survivors 2 hits to go down. Dwight's going down in 1, realistically. Feng is another character I just couldn't see being that high. She's literally a gamer, and Ghostface even notes that gamer reflexes don't translate to real life, which actually gives us a hint that she's on the weaker side of survivors, lore-wise. So sure, she's got the determination, but I don't think she would survive long. Jane, I'd say a similar thing for. While she is much stronger in terms of her character and motivation, she's also been a talk show host and celebrity most of her life, and so is probably a bit soft in that sense. The kicker here too is that she was also in a car crash just before she got taken, suggesting she would lore accurately be injured without the entity's help. Yun-Jin, sort of a similar deal. Whilst her personality is very strong and toughened, she's been a producer all of her life, and I doubt has much in the way of survival skills or the ability to physically fight back, meaning I think she would be considerably weaker. They would be slightly weaker. These are the survivors that would be weaker than how they're presented in game, but not by much. They still have key survival skills that would let them live on, and maybe even the ability to push back against some of the weakest killers. Thalita and Renato I want to pair up, as the two seem to work very much as a team a lot of the time. They're also both shown as capable in their lore with their survival of Skull Merchant, with Renato even taking a slash to the arm, but continuing on regardless. I think this probably would affect him a bit in the trials, but they could surely patch it up. They're also likely a bit physically stronger and more enduring than most, with their years of their kite fighting experience too. Sable I'd say the same for, despite her being so up for entering the realm. She doesn't necessarily have any appropriate skills for the trials aside her research of the supernatural, but this doesn't seem to help her much really, with her never actually figuring out the origins behind anything, just exploring the ideas on her podcast. We could maybe say she has some sort of affinity with darkness though, or even the entity due to the tattoo on her leg, so I am going to put her a bit higher up, but I don't think she portrays much otherwise in the way of survival skills or resistance to damage or magical ability or anything like that. So V, I'd also say the same. She's a drummer and isn't shown to have notable survival skills or anything. She would maybe have some faster reflexes as a result of her drumming, but that's about it, so maybe not too low, but I don't think too high either. Lots of the more human characters, to be honest, are kind of hard to distinguish. I'm mainly just going off of what we know in their lore, and there's a few things maybe that point toward them being weaker or stronger, but it really depends, let's be real. Adam, I'm mainly putting higher down to his upbringing being explained, and it being noted that he's very intelligent, empathetic, but also just appears quite physically strong now, meaning I think he'd be stronger than most regular survivors in the realm, and be able to tank a bit more. Jeff is sort of similar. He's empathetic and caring, and just also appears physically stronger than most. I could see him easily being able to fight back against, at the very least, characters like Legion. We know he used to get into fights as well, and so likely has some sort of experience there too. Claudette is a similar case. While she's just a person, she does have key survival skills, specifically in her botany and healing, but also just her intelligence alone, I'd say, is a really key factor in her ability to survive the trials. I think specifically how botany mentioned she can essentially make healing tinctures out of various plants is a very key detail in noting her survival capability. They wouldn't change. This is our tier for the survivors that I think are pretty well represented by their current power level in the realm, based on what we know about them in the lore. Meg is just a regular person, so would likely be weaker than how she's depicted in the realm. However, she does have notable survival skills, and her running is obviously a huge plus for her. Meg is also seen to tank some harsh injuries, such as her leg snapping basically, so there's signs that she's a bit more toughened as well. Kate maybe seems unassuming and similar to the characters of Yun-Jin and Jane, with her being from the music world and being a celebrity. However, I'd say Kate does sort of prove herself, with her being one of few characters to evade the entity to some degree, with her dodging its claws when they come at her in a cave. She's noted to be an incredibly positive character and a light for many in the realm, possibly posing a threat to the entity's dark intentions. Whilst this doesn't mean she can literally defeat the entity or something, I do think it allows her to resist it to a greater degree. Jake, I think, is pretty well represented as a survivalist and a character who's clearly got a good amount of knowledge of mechanisms but also key survival skills, able to fall completely silent when injured and hold in his grunts of pain. This is huge and I think shows off that lore accurately he would be very capable in the trials, able to sneak around and maybe even fight back a bit. Nia is the same, with her being a bit of a delinquent in her lore and stated to have cat-like agility with how she moves and evades people. She's also noted by Ghostface in his graphic to be quite annoying to catch. In a similar way to Jake, I could see her using this to her advantage, and even possibly getting the jump on the killers in some scenarios, with her being quite bold as well. Orela also follows this trend, I think, with her not only being a good survivalist as a paramedic, but further having some experience or knowledge of the realm prior to it, due to reading many of Cliff Barra's stories. These stories frequently depicting things found in the realm, such as the killers. Zarina is also a very tough, strong-minded character, and despite maybe seeming unassuming as a documentarian, she was doing her work very much in the field and in the way of danger constantly. Therefore, I'd actually say she would be about the same level of power or ability that we see in game, able to survive with relative ease and likely put up a fight if needed. Laurie and Quentin I'll group together as two characters who stood their ground and beat the very notable forces of Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. No small feat for either of them. They maybe did also get quite lucky, to be fair, but regardless, they did achieve this still. Looking into the future for a character like Laurie too, and we see she only becomes more and more capable and confident with time. I think the same would likely be true of Quentin, and so the both of them I could see being able to stand their ground well. Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan I will group together as they all have around the same experience. I'd debate Nancy is maybe the most capable of the three, with her being intelligent but also clearly capable at defending herself well. Overall, I think the three of them though are represented well currently in game, with them showing their strength within Stranger Things, surviving various supernatural forces that are far stronger than them. In cases of weaker killers, I could also totally see them fighting back to some level. They'd be stronger. This is our tier for the survivors who would be stronger than how they appear in game, and likely would be able to survive far longer or easier than most, able to potentially even fight back and take down a portion of the killers. Ace is maybe surprising to see here, however I do think he'd actually be stronger than how he's presented in game. Ace is all about survival during his life, and his tome even shows off just how big a beating he can take and still stand back up. I mean, even in the trials, you can hear his breathing is so relaxed even when he's injured. That says a lot. This guy is surprisingly tough and also very slippery, surviving so many situations he probably shouldn't have. Tapp, I'd also say, is up here being a very capable investigator and having proper training as a detective. I think he'd be more than capable of surviving the trials, but also fighting back when necessary and likely able to do some real damage to some of the more human killers. David is a clear example of a more regular survivor who would actually be pretty formidable to face down for the killers. A number of the more human killers like Legion, Trickster, and so on would definitely be weaker than David. He has years of fighting experience being a debt collector and bare-knuckle fighter. David is tough and also very protective of others, and noted by Ghostface too to embolden other survivors and be a pain to face. David could likely beat a bunch of the human killers in a one-on-one fight. Cybil and Lisa I'm putting up here simply because they've survived Silent Hill long enough that I think they deserve to be up here and get a bit of credit for it. Both are incredibly tough for their own reasons, and I think they're actually a bit stronger than their in-game appearance. Rose and Saga are sort of similar. Whilst not the protagonists of Alan Wake, they are both key in aiding and helping him escape from the dark place, and so respectively I think deserve a bit of credit and acknowledgement here too. Taurie is another character who has trained a lot in her life for the realm, and more so to be a killer. This means even as a survivor, Taurie understands the realm far better than most, and knows what the entity wants. For the most part, with her being a devoted servant to it. Her power is shown off to some degree with her perk Shoulder the Burden, which allows her to completely shift a hook state onto herself, which is pretty unheard of. I can also just see Taurie being a good and capable fighter, as well as being extensively knowledgeable on the realm. Yui is another very tough character with years of taking scrapes and crashes when riding her motorbike. I mean, she enters the realm and fearlessly stands down against the Oni. So yeah, Yui is pretty damn tough, and I would say is depicted as weaker in the trials than how she would be in reality. She's fast, strong, and I think could put up a good fight against the killers, whilst also being very altruistic, as we also see. Felix and Élodie both went through training when they were young to prepare themselves for a war with the entity. At least that's what they later found out. Therefore, these two are more capable than most I'd imagine to survive the realm. I think Élodie especially has a great breadth of experience, with her working for the same person as Haddie for many years, going on a number of wild adventures. Both of them though would be capable of survival here, and likely even accessing a higher level of power by connecting to the realm itself. Mikaela would also likely be much stronger than she appears. Sure, she's maybe not literally as durable as some others up here, but with the untethered power of the boons, she'd likely be stronger than most, or at least just protected. Mikaela is able to apply a number of effects which seem to have genuine consequences on the world around her, making her a valuable buff to the survivor side. She also has some sort of power as well, with her having dreams of the entity and the realm. She's a clairvoyant, and so can literally see the danger coming. Jonah is stronger simply down to his CIA training and the fact that he's very intelligent. He's also likely got a kill count far higher than most killers, which is moving on. Gabriel is another unassuming character, but one that definitely is stronger than you might think. He was literally made to survive in harsh conditions when exploring and colonizing new worlds. He was made for this, you could say. Whilst a bit of a joke, it's literally true. He was made for this exact thing, and so he would be more durable and also have the survival skills necessary to survive this. He also fought back against Hux of all things and lived to tell the tale, so, you know, credit where credit's due. They'd be much stronger. This is our tier for characters who would likely be able to fight back, but also fight back against these stronger than human killers and genuinely stand a good chance. Tubarão is an operative from Rainbow Six Siege, so he would certainly have experience with survival and taking a hit or two. I could see him actually being a lot stronger than how he's portrayed in the trials, and likely able to even take down some of the killers if he wanted to. Rick and Michonne have survived a zombie apocalypse for around 9 years when they both get taken. It's a long time to have survived, and they have a considerable amount of survival skills and toughness from this time. They're able to fight effectively and would have good strategies and know a plethora of useful survival skills, so I could see them easily resisting a number of the stronger killers. Vittorio is another survivor who explored the realm of the entity extensively and likely unlocked key knowledge that would help him a lot within the trials if he was left unbound. He's likely able to harness a number of magical elements, seen with his tattoos and also his perk Potential Energy, and I guess just his general vibe and aura. He could likely take down a number of the killers just with his knowledge he has, using the realm and its powers to his advantage. The troop may seem a bit deceiving too, however they managed to fight all the way to Vecna's rotted tower. No small feat, and something they did due to feeling so accomplished elsewhere. They wanted a bigger challenge, and Vecna was it. This depicts the bards as actually kind of insane in terms of power, and likely far more powerful than we realize. They have access to spells and arcana too, and so likely could take on a number of killers with their magical abilities. Lara Croft is tough as nails, and she's even fought things not too dissimilar from the Oni before, and has beaten them. She's shown throughout her games to perform a number of insanely impressive stunts, and surviving what honestly should be near impossible. She gets some crazy injuries and lives through them, so hey, credit to her. Lara is a perfect example of what a survivor is, and could definitely and easily survive the realm, and likely fight back freely against a number of killers. Ripley and Rain I'm grouping together as the two alien fighting characters. Both of them have taken on and defeated xenomorphs. Both are very strong and capable, and due to their experiences could take on as strong or maybe even stronger characters. Xenos are pretty high up the food chain, so these two are way stronger than they appear in the trials. I mean, if you can take down a xenomorph, you can take down probably the majority of the killer roster, to be honest. Yoichi would also be very strong, and this is largely down to his extensive research into the supernatural and his endowment of supernatural ability. Much like Mikaela, he can seemingly not only hear the dead, but also predict or partially see the future, allowing him to survive with ease, but also combat the supernatural or evil in general, guided by his father and the dead. He's further shown as generally pretty fearless throughout his lore, and quite physically strong too. Silent Hill protagonists, Cheryl and James. These two have been through a lot, and Cheryl is even noted in the realm to hold some power over the entity due to an agreement made with it. I definitely think she's far stronger than she may often be given credit for, therefore. Cheryl likely does have magical protections, noted in Soul Guard, and so while sure maybe she doesn't have the literal force to defeat the killers, in the same way as some others, she does have the ability to resist and survive them. James, I think, is similar as well, although it's likely not quite to the same power level as Cheryl, but still fairly considerable, I'd say. As he's just a skin, we don't quite get the same idea for him, but I think he's around the same more than likely as another Silent Hill protagonist. They'd be overpowered. This is our tier for the survivors who could reasonably overpower or beat the majority of the killers if they weren't nerfed. All aside maybe the strongest of the killers such as Dracula or Vecna. Bill, lore accurately, is kind of crazy and canonically took down 3 tanks when he died. This is insane, considering it's hard enough to take down one with a full team firing on it. So the fact Bill did this is a real show of his power from his years of being in the military and then surviving the green flu outbreak later on. He's also incredibly altruistic and able to coordinate teams of people well. Ash is lore accurately the savior of his universe. He's the one, a prophesized savior of humanity. Therefore, I think it's very likely that he'd be able to take down most of the killers if his same signature dumb luck transferred through to the trials. He'd be able to evade most killers and likely defeat them one way or another, especially if he had access to his boomstick, which was seemingly robbed of him when he entered the realm. Very sad. Haddie, lore accurately, would be far stronger than how she appears in the trials, which is debatably already quite strong. She'd be even stronger. She'd be stronger largely due to her experience and knowledge of the realm before ever coming to it. Throughout her life, she experienced a number of overlaps and entity-affected areas, preparing her for what was to come. Her ability to resist the entity in the realm is likely a tempered version of her true abilities, which would more than likely enable her to alter the trials to her own will if she wished. Nicolas Cage may be surprising to see so high, but he's very similar to someone like Haddie, with his abilities to harness his imagination being a key tool that would allow him to fight back against the entity and likely adjust the trials to his will if he wasn't being nerfed by it. In the realm, your imagination and mental capacity is a key tool that allows you to create things and even adapt the environment around you, much like we see with the Observer or Trix, the Mad Designer. Whilst he may not be able to attack killers in a literal way overly well, I think if he can indeed hone this ability to create things, he would genuinely be one of the strongest survivors in the trials. Resident Evil protagonists: Jill, Leon, Chris, Claire, Ada, Carlos, Rebecca, and Sheva. I'm grouping them all together here, as I think it's a little bit pointless to separate them individually, although there may be some of them who are slightly stronger than others. Overall, they all do absurd feats within their respective stories. Leon takes down an entire cult that spans an island, along with dozens of BOWs. Jill takes down the Nemesis canonically, and Chris and Sheva take down Wesker, just to name a few examples. Some of these characters are also enhanced in some way. Jill, for example, actually ages slower than most people, and is stronger and quicker as well, due to her survival of the T-virus. So yeah, the Resident Evil cast as a whole is just kind of overpowered, and would likely best most of the killers, bar maybe Vecna or Dracula, or someone like that. Even Dracula I think they could beat. Probably not Vecna, that's probably going a bit too far. Maria is a manifestation from James's mind, and therefore she likely can't really be killed by anyone aside him, truly. This means if she remained with her true power, she'd likely be basically unkillable by anyone. I don't think this means she could defeat the killers though, but I do think she'd be able to survive them, considering she literally just couldn't die, so a bit of a different one here. She couldn't fight back, but she would be able to just survive. Castlevania protagonists: Trevor Belmont, Soma Cruz, and Alucard. These characters are shown to already be incredibly powerful, with some of them taking out Dracula, who's debatably the second strongest out of all of the killers. Quite the feat, and means it's highly likely that they'd be able to deal with the lesser ones with ease. Characters such as Alucard specifically are particularly powerful due to him being part vampire vampire, meaning he could very easily overpower a number of the killers, if not, again, basically all of them, aside like the top 2 or 3. Alan Wake, though, is debatably the strongest out of all the characters, and not for a reason too dissimilar to Nicolas Cage, which is that he's able to change the world around him by writing, with him actually being responsible for his own ending up in the realm. It suggests that even for characters like the Entity, he'd be able to potentially write a story where it gets defeated, and the same for strong characters like Vecna or Dracula too. It's plausible at the very least. It's also perfectly plausible he could just choose to write himself out of the realm one day too. So yeah, Alan Wake, of all the people, maybe unassuming, is probably the strongest survivor lore accurately. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.